Welcome back to Mobility Project. Here's what's on tap today. Sometimes, in spite of our best efforts, an athlete comes into us, herniated disc, collapsed disc, maybe it's an old injury, they fell off a 40-foot building, maybe they played college football, doesn't matter. The key is that sometimes what we focus on is, hey, that disc is pushing on a hot nerve, and it's irritating the nerve. And one of the things that we can't do very much is kind of change that disc a little bit. There are some techniques involved, but that's not here to talk about. What we can do, though, is make sure the athlete's braced, check, we can unload that disc pressure by 80% if we can get stiff. Okay, got that under control. The other thing I can do is try to relieve the tension on the nerve. And so instead of thinking of a model of disc pressing on nerve, in this situation or iteration, I can think about the nerve getting pulled onto the disc. And so, for example, at the hip, when the hip moves, especially into flexion, one of the things that happens is that hip can steal a lot of slack and tissue and pull it with it, especially if that hip is not rolling, sliding, gliding independently in the socket. So instead of the hip just spinning in place around, it ends up winding up or ratcheting that neural tissue, and that's a problem as we pull that kind of nerve under high tension, past that open facet. We can irritate that facet, irritate that nerve facet interface, and then more importantly, we can also bowstring that nerve across the disc. So we're always thinking, how do we make our athletes more efficient? And this is one of the ways that we can unload the system as a coach and athlete. So we'll talk about that in a second. Now further, one of the things we want to do is when we're looking at kind of ungliding nerve bed, a lot of times we just don't think of ourselves as having these complex nervous systems. That nerve just gets stuck in the bed and trapped in that tissue, especially at the proximal hamstring, which is that high hamstring. That's where we tend to sit. This is the area, as a good athlete, we tend to load more often, and it just tends to get a lot of abuse. So the theory tonight is like, how do we unload the whole system specifically and talk about that proximal hamstring specifically. So homework number one, we set this up the other night, but I'm going to basically take this hip, I'm going to wind up, get 200 or 300 pounds of tension on this band, and it's a lot of tension here. And it's going to take that much to try to imagine pulling my hip to the back of the socket. Now I'm going to put myself into a relatively high neural tension position. If I was just trying to stretch the muscle here, I may have some luck, but I'm trying to get all my weight kind of through this leg's going for a ride. I can't stretch a loaded muscle. What I can do is by bringing that leg across the body, basically adducting that's a high neural tension position because it takes all that neural slack out. And so now in this position, I'm just going to keep my belly tight. I'm pulling my belly away from my pants to protect my back, and I'm trying to fold forward like, I think it's chaturanga, could be wrong. But I'm just going to floss in and out, and I touch that and I come out. I don't get hot nervy pain, but I'm just going to hang out. I can also add a little element of extra rotation, bring that leg across, floss, come out. Make sure I'm trying to accumulate to 2 minutes. You can see I've got significant tension here to pull that back and really unload that piece of the capsule. One of the things you're going to find is that you're going to be able to hit some kind of crazy corners. You can even stand up a little bit and really try to shove that hip back, open up that hip capsule. It's a nice way to kind of get into some of those corners where you're having a hard time. If we look at hip flexion, which is basically what I was mobilizing in a classic, almost gymnastic style where we just eliminate all the other variables, load the single joint, full range of motion is about 120 degrees, 130 degrees. For my athletes, and this makes a big difference to make sure I'm not working end range. And here you can see that I'm missing a little bit, and I bind up here, a little sore from the day, but what I just did was, let me take the ball out of my pocket, and I get a big difference. In fact, that's full range of motion, and then when I actually test myself, I don't come under tension until way past vertical. Even though we kind of say that this is straight up and down neutral, I can get all the way here and still go straight up and down all the way here, and with that leg straight, I'm no tension until past here. It makes a big, big difference. And as athletes are running, I get better hip flexion, better hip extension. If I'm pushing, it makes a big difference. You'll notice significant changes in that bottom control. Homework number one. Homework number two. This ball is made from our friends at Yoga Tune-Up, believe it or not. What I love about this ball is it's a little bit softer. Certainly the lacrosse ball is the sledgehammer man's ball, but sometimes you need a soft touch. What's great about this ball is it's a little bit tacky and lets me kind of get into the nether region bit. And what I'm talking about is that high proximal hamstring. So I can get in there and really pull those tissues almost off the tuberosity, that kind of the insertion, that sit bone there,
and right on that sits bone, and I can glide in. And of course, since I'm interested in biasing the tissue at that position of emphasis, which is leg straight, I can do that in that position too. A little bit softer ball allows me to kind of get around the corners and mash through that. So, I don't know, check it out. This is yogatune-up.com. It's a nice tacky ball. Pinky ball works. We've put the yellow balls here before, but nice way to get in here. Lastly, just to unglue the whole system, I want you to think we're going to smash up the calf today, up on the wall, but I'm going to add some external rotation to the hip, and then I'm going to press in and just glide from bent leg into straight. So it's a big neural slack tensioner. Boom, hit that thing, touch, come out, touch, come out. We're almost thinking about just gliding in and out for about 2 minutes. And you will notice radical suppleness changes. You can see that I can get this leg straight. This leg is basically bent, and that took me 2 minutes. That's what's on tap. We'll see you guys tomorrow.